Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, China will grant visa-free entry to Canadian and British nationals starting tomorrow till the end of the year, leaving the United States as the only Five Eyes country without the visa-free access. The policy takes effect as China marks the start of the Lunar New Year. According to the Japanese Foreign Ministry and the U.S. State Department, Japan also pledged $17.8 million to NATO for support to Ukraine, while Japanese Foreign Minister and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio agreed in Munich to accelerate a coordination for Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's planned March visit to Washington. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that any deal between the United States and Iran must involve the removal of all enriched uranium from Iran, as well as Tehran's ability to enrich more. His comments come as Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi heads to Switzerland for the second round of renewed nuclear talks. US President Donald Trump said Board of Peace member states will announce at an upcoming meeting on Thursday a pledge for more than $5 billion for reconstruction and humanitarian efforts in Gaza. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has published a list of over 300 prominent figures mentioned in the files of U.S. financier Jeffrey Epstein. The letter lists all former and current officials or politically significant figures whose names have been mentioned or at least once. The Russian embassy in Ottawa rejects accusations by the Canadian authorities in connection with statements by European countries about the poisoning of blogger and longtime Putin critic Alexei Navalny, who was listed as a terrorist and extremist in Russia. Nepali candidates launched their campaigns for next month's parliamentary elections. The first since deadly anti-corruption protests toppled the previous government in 2025, interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki says the election will draw the future of the country. A global artificial intelligence summit kicks off in New Delhi with big issues from job disruption to child safety. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the 5-day AI Impact Summit, which aims to declare a shared roadmap for global AI governance and collaboration. Now for this hour, we start with the breaking news coming in from New Zealand. Dramatic eyewitness footage has emerged from New Zealand, showing a truck left stranded after a bridge collapsed during severe storms in the country's North Island. Heavy rain and strong winds have been battering the island nation, causing the bridge to give way as the truck was crossing. Video and photos from the scene show the vehicle stuck amid fallen trees, debris, and widespread damage around the collapsed structure. The severe weather has continued into Monday with more heavy rain and wild winds affecting parts of the North Island. Flights, trains, and ferries have been disrupted. Several roads have been closed and tens of thousands of residents have been left without power. Authorities are urging people to avoid unnecessary travel as conditions remain dangerous. Now we move on to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has expressed cautious optimism about striking a deal with Iran, despite acknowledging the failure of past attempts. Speaking at a new conference in Bratislava on February 15th, Rubio said no one has ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we are going to try. Let's listen into other statements made by the U.S. Secretary of State.
We're dealing with radical Shia clerics. Okay, we're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling. I think they're traveling right now to have important meetings, and we'll see how that turns out.
This comes as Iran confirms that Tehran is actively pursuing a nuclear agreement with the U.S. that offers mutual economic benefits. This announcement was made just days before the second round of talks between the two nations, aiming to resolve their decades-long nuclear dispute and avoid military escalation. While the U.S. has deployed multiple aircraft carriers to the region and is preparing for a potential sustained military campaign, Rubio has highlighted that President Donald Trump remains committed to diplomacy and a negotiated solution, though he also warned that military action might be necessary if talks fail. On the other hand, Iran has made threats to strike U.S. military bases in West Asia should it face an attack. However, Iran's latest comments have signaled a more conciliatory approach, with them stating that they are open to a compromise as diplomatic efforts continue. Now we welcome retired Colonel Sanjay Sirohi. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Colonel, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Iran and U.S., what do you think, as they say that they are not U.S., but as Iran says that they are ready to compromise, how does that compromise look like for Iran versus what would be acceptable for U.S.?
Good morning, Asuma. Thank you very much for having me on the news channel and discussing something very, very important. Now, as regards the Iran and U.S. is concerned, there are multiple issues. The main issue when the United States started talking about the peace deal or negotiation, it was basically that the nuclear deal and the nuclear deal, Iran should not carry on the enrichment of uranium, which they have already done, and their reports are they have already reached the 60% enrichment of uranium, and that they have got about 450 kg of enriched uranium up to 60%. So America is very, very worried because this 60% can increase to 90% to make it a nuclear weapon. So that was the first point. But now what has happened is that Israel is not happy with this deal. Israel wants that there should be another two things which must be discussed with Iran, and Iran must be forced to accept those things. First is that there should be cap on the missile deployment and missile program. And secondly, Iran should be made to understand that they are not going to support their proxies, whether it was Hezbollah, it was Hamas or Houthis or any other organization which Iranians are supporting, that is the proxies in Iraq and all in the Middle East. So these are the 2 points which are still to be discussed, whereas Iran is very, very adamant. They have made it very clear that they are ready to discuss about the nuclear program, but not on every other program. So this is where the problem has come into. And now with the second round of talk, now if the Iran is talking about conciliation, then I think Iran may have thought, because the way the Americans are building up their military assets in all around Iran, so I think they are trying to pressurize Iran to come to some conclusion and to come to negotiation and accept whatever the Americans are asking for. Asuma.
Yes, and Colonel, as we heard, President Trump told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last year that he would support Israeli strikes on Iran's ballistic missile program if nuclear talks fail between them. So what would be the risk allowing such, and how would it affect India and the neighboring nations, as it's not so far from Iran?
Look, Asuma, if the war take place, then the biggest problem for not only India, for other countries also, who are banking on the oil supports from the Middle East. Because once the war starts, then the first thing Iran will do is they will close the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed due to some conflict, or the Iranians deliberately try to control that Strait of Hormuz, then 20% of the oil which gets exported through Strait of Hormuz will be affected. And not only Iran oil, it will be oil of Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia. It's all these, Iraq, all these countries will not be able to export their oil. So that is the main concern of the Middle Eastern countries. And that is why they are urging America not to attack Iran, because in that case, there will be a lot of turmoil in Middle East, as a result of which the supply chain of oil will get totally disrupted. and that is going to create a lot of problems, not only to Iran, but to all other countries who are banking on the oil support from Middle East.
And Colonel, yes, thank you for highlighting that. And Colonel, you know, talking about oil, how do you think Iran, in its negotiations, is using oil and also Strait of Hormuz as a negotiation point, or you know, in their tactics to reach a negotiation with U.S.?
Well, as I told you, that Iran is mainly supplied to China. And if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, then the oil which is going from Iran to China will be stopped. Number two, the oil which was coming from Venezuela to China, that has already been blocked. So the main problem will be for the Chinese, because then their supply chain of oil will get affected. So as a result of that, the Iranians are trying to negotiate with Americans on this point, that in case Iran is hit by the Americans and Israelis together, then Iran will hit all the military bases which are located in the Middle Eastern countries, whether it is Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and UAE. So all these bases will be hit. And I am telling you, if Iran, all sides are hit by Americans and Israel, then I have got no doubt in my mind that Iran will start hitting the oil sites of all other Middle Eastern countries. So that is a big problem, and that is why even Donald Trump is slightly reluctant to take military action, although the posturing is moving toward the military action. But I think it is more of a coercive point, that they are trying to put pressure on the Iranians that they must accept all the demands of Americans and Israelis together. Asuma.
And last but not least, as building on your answer, as you mentioned, you know, even U.S. is hesitant to attack. How expensive is it for U.S. to move all these armadas to the region and maintain it ready, steady over there? And what would be the risk of Arab countries being driven into this conflict?
Look, Asuma, the point is that all these aircraft carriers which have moved, like Abraham Lincoln has moved from South Pacific Sea, and Gerald Ford has moved from Caribbean. So all these move, when these armada, and it is only not one aircraft carrier, it is a complete ecosystem which moves with the aircraft carrier. So it is quite expensive. But Donald Trump also realizes that although this is expensive, but going into war will be more expensive. And the main point is that going into war, when monetarily it will be expensive, but it will be also expensive in terms of lives, because Americans will not be ready to accept the body bags. That is the biggest concern. Because if they get involved, it is not Iran, it's not Venezuela that they will finish the operation in a few hours. If they go into war with Iran, then it is going to take weeks. And Donald Trump has already said that it is going to be long-drawn war. So if that takes place, then it will be very, very expensive, not in terms of economics, but in terms of human resources, which Iranians will make sure that they will try to destroy and kill as many American soldiers as possible. And in that case, Donald Trump will have a lot of domestic problems when he starts accepting the body bags from Middle East.
With that, I would like to thank Colonel Sanjay Sirohi for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you. Now we move on to U.S. The alleged gunman behind the Bondi Beach attack, Naveed Akram, made his first court appearance on Monday, February 16 this year. Akram faces 59 charges, including 15 counts of murder and terrorism offenses, following the December 14, 2025 shooting that has left 15 people dead and 40 others injured during a Hanukkah celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach. During the hearing, Akram appeared via video link from Goulburn Correctional Center and gave brief responses to the magistrate's questions. His father, Sajid Akram, was shot and killed by police at the scene. Akram's lawyer, Ben Archbold, mentioned that it was too early to discuss how his client would plead or the details of the attack. However, the case is scheduled to return to court on April 9, 2026. Let's listen into what the alleged Bondi gunman's lawyer has shared.
I haven't spoken to him about the attack in that regard. All that we're doing at the moment is starting the process. He's just a client, and he's a client that needs to be represented, and we don't let our personal view get in the way of our professional obligations. The matter's been adjourned. I've got nothing more to say today. Thank you.
Now we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what more can you tell us about this latest, statements and also what has come out from Australia?
The problem is what really happened is a little bit controversial and not identified clearly yet. Firstly, it is clear that they shoot many people in the festival, and that is a hate crime, Semitism related issue. But even if this is the main part, indeed they have already thrown the bomb to the people, but not exploded. So that's why what really happened, one by one, they need to identify clearly through their investigation, and which will publish in the court. And that is the first one they need to identify. After that, of course, a very important thing is who really involved it and how to prevent it. Who really involved it? Of course, the two people involved this directly, but there is a possibility that another people involved this or support this. These are also the matter, because without identifying these kind of people, the Australian government cannot identify 3% of the terrorism. And even if the only two people involved, of course, how to prevent this is very important matter. There is many information of the hate crime or Semitism in this case, but at the same time, Australia's government failed to prevent it. So that's why it has happened, why the Australian government failed. These are the very important lesson for Australia. And this is not only the lesson for Australia, but also a lesson for other countries too, because there is a possibility similar things could happen in the near future. And how to prevent these kind of things is a very important matter.
Right. As you rightfully mentioned, we still don't know so much about this case and the alleged shooter. How has these gun laws changed in Australia after this Bondi Beach attack?
Gun law itself, Australia, originally, this is relatively severe. But now they restrict more, and it is not easy to give the license so easily just now. Because, anyway, this is not so easy, but now more severe it has happened. And giving the license or checking the license regularly, these are the matter. In the past, there is no regular checking of the license once they have, but this is not permanent now.
Yes. Although it's not permanent, for the safety of Jewish people there and to further avoid any hate crimes, what do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, in this case, the checking the remarks of the people. In the case of the perpetrator this time is before they conduct this terrorism, they visit Philippines and receive training from Islamic extremists. So that's why when Australia checks their travel plan, and or their remarks on the sense was this kind of information, and there is a possibility they can identify their plan to do before they conduct it. So that's why a more regular check is needed. The problem is how much cost Australia will pay for the national security, especially preventing terrorism. But in this case, Australia's resources are limited, Australia think, and that is true. Of course, in case of the visiting other countries, the cooperate with the Philippines is also matter, or other countries matter. So international cooperation reduced cost of the security, but at the same time, this is not enough. Anyway, so that's why Australia must take charge of the Australian security. And in this case, the view from this incident, what Australia has done is not enough, clearly. So that's why Australia need to improve more regular check, more regular deployment, more regular regular identification of the potential terrorists. These are needed. That is clear.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Europe, Hungary's opposition leader Peter Magyar has vowed to end corruption, revive the economy and restore civil freedoms at a major election rally in Budapest. With parliamentary elections set for April 12th, Magyar has emerged as the strongest challenger to nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orban since Orban returned to power in 2010. Magyar's Tisza party has been leading Orban's Fidesz in opinion polls for months. Addressing supporters, Magyar said the economy had reached a dead end and accused Orban and his allies of enriching themselves in office. He promised total transparency in public contracts and to recover funds he said had been lost to corruption. Magyar has also accused the government of spying on opponents and pledged to strengthen civil liberties as rights groups continue to allege a crackdown on media, courts and minority groups. The rally comes as Orban presses on with hardline policies, even as international attention focuses on Hungary ahead of the high-stakes vote. Let's listen in.
Ha az én magánéletemben kutakodhatnak, akkor mindenki más magánéletében megtehetik ugyanezt. Ha valaki esetleg azt szeretné, hogy Rogán Antal vagy Orbán Viktor leskelődjön a hálószobájában, akkor nyugodtan szavazzon a Fidesz. Repülőrajt és gazdasági növekedés helyett földbe állt a magyar gazdaság és a termelékenység. Nemhogy mentőpajzs nem érkezik, hanem még arra is képtelen Orbán Viktor kormánya 3-4 éve, hogy a nekünk járó uniós forrásokat hazahozzák. Sok ezer milliárd forintot loptak el a magyaroktól. Tudjuk jól, sejtjük, hogy hol van ez a pénz. 60 pusztán, Batidán, kastélyokban, jachtokon, magánrepülőknél, magántőke alapokban és a mindennapi úrizálásban. Innen is üzenjük, visszakérjük és visszaszerezzük a magyar emberek vagyonát. A korrupció felszámolása érdekében haladéktalanul csatlakozunk az Európai Ügyészséghez, létrehozzuk a Nemzeti Vagyon Visszaszerzési és Védelmi Hivatalt, és biztosítjuk a közpénzzel kapcsolatos szerződések teljes körű nyilvánosságát. A jogállam intézményi garanciákon keresztül is érvényesülni fog.
Now we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what makes Orban and this particular opponent different when running for presidential elections? Dr. Nagao, you might be muted here.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, mute has resolved. Anyway, most important difference in this case is ruling party or opposition party. That is very important because what I want to say is since 2010, more than 15 years, the Prime Minister Orban continued as a leader of the Hungary. So 15 years is too long for any people. So that's why the people want to complain the new. Because long term means that when they sworn in, the people compare with him and the predecessor, Prime Minister Orban and the predecessor. In this case, image of the Orban is new. But after that, 15 years later, people compare with the current Orban and Orban in the past. Orban is a past is, of course, fresh image, new image, but the current Orban, compared with the Orban in the past, this is not new. So that's why automatically long term indicates that people want to complain and people want to change the leader. In this case, this new opposition party has the advantage. And if the economy is not good, this is a more push for the opposition party to ask Orban to change the policy or change the government itself. So that's why the opposition party has the advantage in this case. But still, will Orban need to give up maybe view from the current situation? Not so easy. Still, the Orban's regime has a relatively strong base in the Hungary, and rising the power of the TISA will change the government. This is a little bit difficult situation, people believe, and I also believe.
Thank you for highlighting that. And also, you know, the fact that Marco Rubio is meeting Trump's ally or friend, as some media sees it, as Viktor Orban. So do you think this move by US and timing, can it be interpreted as an endorsement by US for Orban?
In this case, US view is global, so Orban is part of it, and the other part is also part of it, because the view from the current President Trump leads the Republican Party, the right or left, this kind of ideology is very important to identify what happened or establishing the world order. So in case of Japan, the Takaichi government is maybe they will support, but President Trump expressed this before the election day. So it looks like President Trump's remark create impact to the election itself. In case of Honduras, it has happened, very same things has happened. So Chile, Honduras, recent election happened, and political right or right wing win the election. And every time the President Trump expressed his opinion, his support before the election day. So, and after that, President Trump's support candidate win the election. In this case, they are close ally and expanding the right group. It's one kind of the achievement President Trump is thinking. So that's why in case of Hungary, that is one of the countries President Trump focusing on, which is expanding the right in the Europe, right in the world, and this is a right of the President Trump. So that is very important for the Trump administration to expand the U.S. influence in the worldwide.
With that, I'd like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you. Now we move on to El Salvador. Relatives of prisoners detained under President Nayib Bukele's anti-gang crackdown in El Salvador have taken to the streets in protest against mass trials. With around 90,000 detainees since 2022, authorities plan to indict and try about 3,000 alleged gang members in large groups. Demonstrators argue this process condemns the innocent along with the guilty, calling it a violation of due process. Family members, including attorney Felix Lopez, whose son has been imprisoned for a year, have condemned the approach, saying it ignores legal guarantees. Despite criticism from human rights groups, Bukele's policies have led to a dramatic drop in homicides, making him popular but controversial. Let's listen into what some of the protesters have shared.
Es condenar justos por pecadores y es irrespetar las garantías que, a pesar del régimen de excepción, siguen vigentes, como el artículo...
Ellos forman parte de un margen de error, que nosotros sabemos que es un margen de error del que el presidente habla. ¿Por qué no le toma en cuenta el margen de error y ve a las personas que andamos en la calle luchando por ellos porque son inocentes, no son pandilleros?
we move on, OpenClaw founder Peter Steinberger is joining OpenAI to help drive the next generation of personal AI agents. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has announced the move on social media, saying OpenClaw will continue as an open source project under a new foundation, with ongoing support from OpenAI. OpenClaw, previously known as CloudBot or Moltbot, is described as a digital assistant capable of managing emails, dealing with insurers, checking in on for flights, and handling other daily tasks. The project has seen a viral rise since November, gaining more than 100,000 stars on GitHub and attracting 2 million visitors in a single week. Its rapid growth has also drawn scrutiny, with China's industry ministry warning of potential security risks if misconfigured. Steinberger says joining OpenAI helps ensure OpenClaw remains open source while expanding its reach. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.